After studying this module, you shall be able to know the concept of psychological research, understand the concept of two types of research, that is quantitative and qualitative, differentiate the two types of research, and identify the application and utility of quantitative methods in research. Importance of research. Psychology has been defined as the science of human behavior. Human behavior has been researched upon from wide perspectives using different research methods. Any research serves four primary aims: the description of the behavioral components from different perspectives, understanding the behavior and the correlates from different perspectives and orientations, prediction of the behavior in different or similar situations, and control the research findings, help in controlling the behavior by designing interventions and employing the results and implication to real life situations. The systematic understanding of behavior using scientifically agreed methods brings wide acceptability and applicability to the concept. Any query, hunch or thought would remain a mere speculation only if it was not systematically explored and understood. Let us take an example. I have observed that if I take tea in the late evening hours, I get poor sleep that night. To systematically understand the relationship between tea consumption and sleep patterns, one needs to adopt a method of research. Of course, my experiences in this regard can be shared with a number of people who may confirm or negate my observation, and I may draw a conclusion based on that. Alternatively, I can take two groups of people with sound sleep patterns and put them to drinking tea and flavored colored water respectively. The resulting sleep patterns can then be studied to confirm or disapprove my hunch that taking tea in the late hours disturbs the sleep patterns. Yes, it is definitely true that there may be number of other factors that may be responsible for this disturbance in sleep patterns. Then a more systematically designed research would lead to complete understanding of the concept. It is thus imperative to have a method in research. This methodological clarity brings scientific legitimacy to psychology and avoids hunches and conjectures. The scientific method of research that one employs and the degree of application of controls over the situational variables and contexts is of importance in research. One can study any phenomena either by focusing only on two relevant variables and applying maximum control over the intervening ones, or by studying it in completely natural surroundings. Laboratory researches are good example when relationships between two variables can be investigated in isolation by allowing minimum intervening variables to contaminate the results. Alternatively, by studying a phenomena in natural settings and using minimal control over situations, one can relate to the context to a situation to a very great extent. There are two approaches to research in psychology. A lot of brainstorming has taken place during the past 2 decades over the investigation and representation of reality in psychological research. The natural science methods have evolved considerably and psychology has gladly employed them for a greater scientific acceptability. A hypothesis is derived on the basis of the previous research in the area which is then put to analysis using the desirable method of research. The results obtained either support or negate the hypothesis. This leads to the support to the existing theory by the evident results, or the counter evidences lead to abandoning or modification of the theory. This is hypothetico-deductive approach as practiced by the natural sciences. At the same time, questioning of established paradigms and methods led to the development of wide-angled interpretation of the current subject matter. The newer approach argues that any subject has scientific credibility if its hypothesis can be falsified by evidence. This was suggested by Popper in 1972. These new methods were readily embraced by other fields of knowledge too. It is just that if a research pertaining to memory phenomena is taken, then the list of nonsense syllables and their recalls would suffice for understanding it. Whereas, for the other perspective, understanding the nature of the memory and the context facilitating the recall would be important. So, there are two perspectives to studying the memory. The real gain, of course, turns out to be for the ever expanding pool of knowledge where the research takes on different perspectives. Let us explore in the preceding sections these methods that are contributing vastly to the subject. There may be different approaches to study and understand the same patterns of behavior in psychological science. Be it context based or laboratory based, a research can often be quantitative or qualitative in the methods used to study the phenomena. So, on the basis of the method used, research can be broadly classified as the qualitative research method. We are going to use the acronym QRM for it, and quantitative method or the QM is going to be used throughout the text for it. The application of either quantitative or qualitative methods to study a problem is just like solving a jigsaw puzzle. One may put the blocks together following rules to arrive at a figure that resembles one's sensibilities, or compose the blocks together to make a figure that is different from the common one but complete. The aim of applying qualitative methods to research is giving a complete and detailed description of the phenomena being studied. There is minimal attempt to reduce the descriptions to numeric data or categories. Focus is to analyze the ambiguities and deviances of behavior, not by generalizing but by contextualizing them. The qualitative research methods rely on ethnographic study, in-depth interviews, case studies, observations, narratives, discourse, and grounded theory. The quantitative methods, on the other hand, follow the approach to classifying and counting the features to construct a statistical model. The findings are generalizable and comparable to other sets of data. The present day psychological research has seen a recent emergence of qualitative methods. Although still holding a secondary place in the field of scientific research, the qualitative research methods have gained wide acceptability and legitimacy. The quantitative methods, on the other hand, are viewed as more objective, unbiased, and global. Putnam in 1979 argued that there are more than one ways in which science is conducted. The first is when an existing theory is unable to explain any phenomena, then look for the extraordinary and deviant conditions that may be responsible for the occurrence. So, do not renounce the theory, but look for special factors that may also be involved, even if as exceptions. The second approach could be when the theory is reliable, but its predictions need to be probed more deeply and extensively. It is in these situations that mathematical models need to be developed and employed to elucidate the predictions. It is on the basis of these mathematical models that hypotheses are tested and predictions are made. It is on the basis of these arguments only that psychology needs to embrace both the quantitative and qualitative approach to develop as a scientific discipline. The researchers focus on the mixed use of quantitative methods and qualitative research methods, which is also referred to as the triangulation. One can read more about the applications from the suggested readings mentioned in the quadrant 4 of this module. Exploring the differences between quantitative and qualitative methods. One may take the liberty of making the statement that differences between the quantitative methods and qualitative research methods are false, only as there are two different approaches to understand the same phenomena. The qualitative research methods explore newer ideas and concepts that can be emboldened by using the quantitative methods. Nevertheless, understanding the differences are important for more meaningful applications of both. The quantitative research methods are a reductionist approach. This means that the quantitative methods aim to reduce the complexities of human behavior and the related variables to simpler forms or mere numbers in order to study a phenomena. The qualitative methods, on the other hand, their aim is to study the behavioral components in wider contexts and perspectives. Individual experiences are important to understand the complete nature of phenomena being studied. The next difference is that the quantitative methods follow a positivist understanding of the human behavior. That is, they take a mechanistic view of the behavior in terms of cause and effect relationship. The qualitative methods, on the other hand, study the human behavior with reference to the meaning attached to it by the person. A mere smile may imply different meanings to different people. So, you can't take a mechanistic approach in qualitative method as suggested by these lines. The quantitative methods result in findings which are believed to be confirmatory and deductive in nature. The qualitative research method approach is considered to be exploratory and inductive in nature. The quantitative method approach takes a fundamental view of the individual and therefore combines and summarizes the behavioral data across the sample measured and uses it to generalize about the population. The qualitative research methods, on the other hand, say there is no single unitary reality apart from one's perception. Each person is entitled to his own reality and experiences, and thus combining and summarizing the data across the individuals is not appreciated by qualitative methods. The quantitative methods pay a lot of emphasis on designing, sampling and generalizability of the findings. The qualitative research methods, on the other hand, are reflexive in nature. This means that qualitative exploring of the phenomena being studied involves reflecting on personal value-based experiences and beliefs that affect the research, and also if there is an alternative design that can stimulate different views of the problem being studied, that is also appreciated. The quantitative methods depend upon mathematics, modeling, meta-analysis, experimentations, surveys and statistical analysis of the data. Whereas for the qualitative research methods, The popular methods are ethnography, phenomenology, hermeneutics, and grounded theory. In quantitative methods, the data is collected through experimentation, survey, questionnaires, and interviews, whereas the qualitative methods rely on using in-depth interviews, direct observations, case studies, and diaries for their data. So, by this we can sum up some of the differences that are so obvious in the qualitative research methods and quantitative research methods. Both the fields of inquiry, both the methods, they have their own importance in the field of psychology, and of course, together using their triangulation is perhaps the best method that should be adopted for psychological research. However, for the current paper, we are trying to focus on quantitative research methods as the primary tool that can be used for psychological research, and we are going to focus on those methods only. Let us come to the application and utility of the quantitative methods in research. The quantitative methods are based on mathematical models. It explains the relationship among the variables and constants in numerical terms. The inputs for the variables pertaining to the behavioral components of interest come in the form of numbers, and similarly, the results are also numerical in nature. The relationship among the variables thus explored can be tested up by setting up the specific conditions again, and of course within the error of measurement they are repeatable. Any research exploring a phenomena is neither completely quantitative nor purely qualitative in its approach. However, the quantitative methods have a remarkably impressive record over the researchers, and for years they are widely preferred over the qualitative methods by the researchers. They have widespread applications. One can have a look at the research journals in order to realize the vast usage of these methods in psychological research. This somewhat biased and pervasive usage can be justified by the following dimensions. The aim of psychological research is to bring out the behavioral variables involved and their uncontaminated interaction in a situation. It is assumed that quantitative methods are more unbiased and free of subjectivity. As discussed above, the focus of quantitative methods are being objective, universal, and researcher neutral production of results. It is assumed that if a researcher takes this positivist approach to study a phenomena, then the scientific credibility of the study can be enhanced. The use of mathematical models and hypothetico-deductive approach of the quantitative methods make very precise and focused in answering the research questions. The data collection methods employed and their statistical analysis provides information and results which are easier to understand in quantitative methods. The hypotheses that are put to test are simple representations of the relationship between the variables being studied. Similarly, the tools are also employed to collect the data, and they are mostly standardized and objective in nature. The obtained data is analyzed statistically and the results are presented numerically or graphically. That again makes very meaningful and convincing to the readers. The quantitative methods emphasize the universal and generalizable results, and in order to achieve that, a fair representation of the population, that is, a substantive sample, needs to be explored for the relevant variables. A large sample that represents the properties of the population adequately is the most suitable for quantitative research. The data procured from this representative sample is treated with powerful statistical tools of high reliability, which makes the results generalizable to the entire population. This lends more acceptability to the findings as they can be compared with other data with similar research formats. Not only this, but the results can also be repeated under similar conditions and controls a number of times. The mathematical and statistical models employed in quantitative methods have given a vast scientific credence to them. The research designs employed, statistical tools used, and the sampling procedures employed, along with the data collection tools, provide scientific fervor to the procedures. The research designs make it easier to control the confounding extraneous variables, and thus the relationship between the relevant variables can be studied in isolation. Applications of quantitative methods in research process. The quantitative methods make their importance felt at each step of the research. Conceptualization. Choosing the appropriate mathematical model to study the concept of interest to the researcher can be done using quantitative methods. The review of literature also has its fair share of quantitative methods in it. The meta-analysis of the available literature in the area of interest is all thanks to quantitative methods. Sampling. Applying the right sampling plan, probability or non-probability, or maybe a mixed sampling plan too, and thus choosing the right representative sample of the appropriate size from the population requires an understanding of the quantitative methods. At the data collection stage too, quantitative methods are important. Collecting the data from the chosen representative sample using experimentations, surveys, standardized questionnaire, etc. requires quantitative inputs. The data analysis, use of descriptive, inferential and multivariate statistical techniques has a large application of quantitative methods to it. The scheme of representation of quantitative methods to different stages of research can be viewed in this diagram that we have on the screen for you people. The wide use of quantitative methods across all the stages of research is evident here. Not only this, but the research surveys report that different fields of psychology like clinical, organizational behavior, educational, etc. make extensive use of quantitative methods in their research. The computer assistance that one gets for quantitative methods in the form of software packages like SPSS, SysStat and AMOS is also appreciable. Summary. Any research serves 4 primary aims: description, understanding, prediction and control. On the basis of the method used, research can be broadly classified as qualitative and quantitative. The aim of applying qualitative methods is giving a complete and detailed description of the phenomenon being studied, and there is minimal attempt to reduce the description to numeric data or categories. The qualitative research methods, on the other hand, have ethnographic study, in-depth interviews, case studies, observations, narrative discourse and grounded theory as their methods. The quantitative methods follow the approach to classification and counting the features to construct a statistical model. The findings are generalizable and comparable to other sets of data. Any research exploring a phenomenon is neither completely quantitative nor purely qualitative in approach. The quantitative methods are objective, universal, and researcher neutral production of results. The obtained data is analyzed statistically and the results are presented numerically and graphically, and this makes it very meaningful and convincing to the readers. Not only this, but the results can also be repeated under similar conditions and controls a number of times. The research designs make it easier to control the confounding extraneous variables, and thus the relationship between the relevant variables can be studied in isolation. The quantitative methods can be applied at nearly all stages of research: conceptualization, review of literature, sampling, data collection, and data analysis. Quantitative methods are all pervasive.